Whosoever finds this podcast, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of background noise.
Dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Hello and welcome back to Background Noise Podcast, where today we, in preparation for Thor: Love and Thunder coming out, I think this weekend, right?
That's right.
We are discussing the first two Thor movies, Thor and Thor: Dark World, and then next week we're going to talk about Ragnarok as well as Love and Thunder. I don't believe there's any bookkeeping issues to take care of, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Well, then
we're still doing what is it, every 2 weeks now? That's the current schedule, right?
I think it's just whenever we find something to talk about at this point.
Yeah, it's not really an informal schedule.
Well, that's news to me. I recorded like 3 episodes without you guys. I was wondering where you were.
Well, interesting. Also, speaking of informal, I forgot to introduce us in the opening. I'm Joe.
I'm Jack.
If you don't know us at this point, well, I'm Joseph.
All right. So yeah,
new viewers. What?
Well, we're still relevant.
How would you start midway through? We're at episode 38. Go back.
Are we?
Yes, because we're a serialized podcast. You have to listen to every episode, or you won't understand anything.
We actually have unfolding plot. All right. So let's start us off with our usual synopsis of the story. So Thor is a story about Thor, who is a Norse god, except maybe they're not gods, because this is explicitly confusing inside of the movies about whether they're actually supposed to be considered gods. Anyway, Thor is living it up on Asgard, doing Thor things, beating people with his hammer, about to be crowned king. Some frost giants get in because apparently that's the evil monstrous race that exists in this universe, is the frost giants, and they spoil blue. Yeah, they spoil all the fun. Thor goes to their homeworld to try to beat him up and get some answers, and accidentally starts a war. And his dad's like, you shouldn't have did that, kid. You don't deserve to be king. You don't even deserve to be my son. You don't deserve to be on Asgard. You don't deserve to be immortal. I'm going to kick you off to Earth. And then the bulk of the movie is him on Earth trying to get back to his hammer, thinking that'll give him his powers, except it doesn't, because he's not worthy. And so then the rest of the movie is him figuring out how to be worthy by basically sacrificing himself for reasons and getting all his powers back and then saving the day. And the reason he sacrifices himself is because Loki is the one who let the frost giants in. Loki, his adopted brother, actually, let the frost giants in, and then for reasons, and is just generally being a sad boy most of the movie, because he's depressed because he's not as good as Thor, and then he's depressed because he realizes that actually he is a frost giant and he was adopted and he was lied to his entire life and everything that he knows is wrong. And so then when Odin goes to sleep because of Odin reasons, Loki becomes literally the Odin sleeps. He literally goes to sleep because of Odin reasons. Loki temporarily takes the throne because Thor is gone, off being on Earth, being a loser. And so Loki's like, now that I am king, I'm going to invite the frost giants in and then murder them, so I'll gain everyone's trust, and then go kill Thor. And that's the reason why Thor sacrifices himself to save some people and ends up getting his powers back. He comes back to Asgard, he fights Loki, and Loki tumbles off into the abyss, never to be seen again, obviously.
Until the end credit scene.
Where he shows up on Earth, messing around with Dr. Solvig's head, leading directly into Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Thor: Dark World, which takes place immediately after the Avengers, where Thor is dealing with various problems that were caused by Loki. Because Loki, he's caused by problems because of Loki.
Yep.
They've imprisoned Loki and a bunch of various people in Asgard because that seems to make sense. And Thor is being depressed and sad because he hasn't been able to go see his girlfriend, who I realize I didn't even mention in the synopsis of the first movie. I forgot to mention Jane Foster, who exists.
It's like she's not a compelling character or something.
We wouldn't say something like that.
No.
And yeah, he's sad because he misses her. And then apparently some magic nonsense called the convergence is happening where all the worlds align. And she's studying that, and she gets herself into trouble because of that, so he goes to save her. And the trouble that she got into is she accidentally absorbed an Infinity Stone, just like you do. Accidentally absorbed an Infinity Stone. Now the Dark Elves are after her because the Dark Elves are the Frost Giants don't exist. The evil magic race that we hate are the Dark Elves. Frost Giants, nobody knows who they are.
I said we hate Dark Elves now.
Yeah, right. That's almost exactly correct. And they want to turn the world into darkness because they're Dark Elves, so what else would they want? And they are trying to get the Infinity MacGuffin out of Jane so they can destroy the world, I guess. And Thor has to stop them, which involves him teaming up with Loki. And nobody trusts Loki, and they repeatedly threaten him, and it's a very funny scene. But then he actually turns out to be trustworthy, but then he pretends to die so that he can become king of Asgard again. I think that's probably basically all the important stuff that happens.
Right, Joe, does Thor win in the second movie of the 4 Thor movies?
Yes, he does defeat. Hold on, checks list. He does defeat Malekith, or whatever the guy's name is.
Malekith is his name.
Yeah, whatever is a role that is vastly beneath Christopher Eccleston's acting abilities. Yes. That's who he defeats.
He played someone super important in Star Wars, right?
Christopher Eccleston?
Yeah, right?
I don't remember. I just know that after Doctor Who, he decided to do a bunch of really bad American films. Like, he decided to be Destro in G.I. Joe, which was terrible. Yeah. He decided to do this. And, yeah, it didn't really work out so well for him.
Well, you can't have it all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the plot synopses. A lot of stuff happens. There's a lot of flashy particle effects on screen.
Mm-hmm. Thor uses hammer, and hammer go...
Yeah.
And then it comes back to him, too, once he throws it.
Yep. The hammer pulls him off.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the hammer pulled you off. Oh no, it wasn't like that.
Okay, so back on track. Yeah, so these, I don't know what...
How dare we bring up a good movie?
Right. The problem with these movies, and I kind of alluded to it in the synopsis, is that both of these movies exist for the MCU, and they don't exist for themselves. Like, Iron Man is a movie that stands on its own, and you can just enjoy Iron Man as its own movie. But the purpose of Thor is to segue into the Avengers. It's to set up Loki as the villain, so you care about him. It's to introduce Thor, so you know what he's about, what his powers are, so you don't have to explain it at the beginning of Avengers. It's to have the little scene with the Tesseract at the end, so you're like, yes, the Tesseract, that's a thing that exists. Right? Is all of Thor is to set up the Avengers. And then all of Thor Dark World is dealing with the aftermath of the Avengers. Because the reason Loki's in prison isn't because of the stuff he did in Thor, it's because he tried to enslave humanity in Avengers. Mm-hmm. Right? There's the stuff with the Dark Elves, but that is basically meaningless. We could have just inserted a random monster that's trying to destroy the world, and it would have been as meaningful to the plot, right?
They should have gone with Fing Fang Foom. Would have been awesome.
Yeah.
They had to save him for the Shang-Chi sequel. 30 years later. What?
Well, yeah, sure.
I think this was or more of the second one. We're gonna jump around a lot because we can. Folks at home, if you can't tell, we do not care. We do not care for these films. It's not that they're bad, but it's not that we would say something like we would rather watch Eternals, but the Eternals is, I suppose, bad enough that it's more entertaining. There's good. What is it? Chris Hemsworth's performance wasn't there's two standouts in the two of these. Mm-hmm. What is it? Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth. And I don't think Hemsworth was there yet because he wasn't it wasn't Ragnarok yet. He wasn't given enough material to be something other than me hit thing with hammer and am Asgardian, So I'm was it? I can say there's at least there's one really good performance in Eternals and in the first Thor, and we'll go to the second Thor, and then I gotta say it's the same level of enjoyment for me. That's really all. I don't know where that went.
I would definitely say, as far as Thor being a dynamic character and actually growing, doesn't really happen till Ragnarok, Infinity War, all of that. But as far as he's definitely more of a static character in these films. But as far as him playing that character, I think he does very well. And I think he does much better playing that in Thor 2 than Thor 1, obviously, because Thor 2 is not a fish out of water story like the first film is. So he definitely knows, I think by now, because this is with Avengers, that was his second time playing Thor. So Dark World is his third time getting to play Thor. I think he has definitely mastered playing the role of Thor at this point. And even though he
make it his own by the third film, I'd say.
Yeah, I feel like he's definitely made it. Are you saying by Ragnarok he's made it his own?
Oh, sorry, by Ragnarok. Yeah, sorry, I was counting Avengers there. Oof.
Gotcha. Yeah, by Ragnarok he sort of made his own thing, but here with what he's given, I think he does a very good job.
Yeah, I think for what is there, for what we have of Thor's characterization, which is he's to quote someone else talking about like video game protagonists, he's a grim, growly man growling grimly, right? He's like kind of stoic, but he's also kind of full of himself, and he's very tough, and he's clearly never had a fight where he's ever lost before. In the beginning of Thor, he's clearly never had a fight where he's ever lost before, right? And so he's like, yes, he's the cocky. I guess he's a cocky protagonist. He's cocky, generic protagonist. I think is pretty much the depth of his characterization. And he technically learns something, right? He sacrifices himself, but there's nothing that would have said. There's nothing that previously in the movie said he wouldn't be willing to sacrifice himself for people, right? Like I think he was always the guy who was going to go into a fight. And he was going to fight to the last man, because like he did that on when they go and invade Frost Giant Land. What is it? Jotunheim?
Jotunheim.
Yeah.
Jotunheim. Yep. Thank you.
He almost gets left behind, doesn't he?
Yeah, he was willing to stay behind and fight. Now he also wasn't going to lose that fight because he was just absolutely taking everyone out with his hammer. But like, so he doesn't learn anything there. I don't know what he would have learned in Thor 2? What is the lesson for him to have learned in Dark World, other than him saying, I don't want to be king? But I think that's just more, he's like, yeah, I was expected to do this thing, and I don't really want it anymore, because now it's not expected of me. So I don't even know if he learned something there, if it's just like, it's
just more like a choice.
Yeah, it's more like him making the only choice he's ever made that was actually something where he had to think about it.
And it wasn't like thrust upon him, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
The lesson for Thor 2 is cherish your loved ones, because there's no telling when a dark elf will come and stab them with their own sword.
Yeah.
That happened twice, didn't it? Because didn't Loki get stabbed with his own dagger or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the same guy stabbed both his mom and Thor. That guy was a scarier villain than Malekith was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even remember that. Did the character even have a name?
I think he did. I just forgot.
If you pay attention to the comic book character that this one is based off of, he has two names, and the one he is a monster is called Curse with a K.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, yeah, Curse. It's Special K cursed.
New Special K. Now with extra black holes.
Extra cursed.
Extra cursed.
Oh, no.
Now with extra curses.
Yes. The only reason I even know that one is because it was like one of the characters in like the Lego Marvel game or whatever. It's just like, oh yeah, there's this big guy.
Yeah.
He's like yellow and stuff in that game. It's like these guys are straight out of the 70s or the 80s. I can't remember. It's like of all the ones to choose. I know it's like you could go into like a whole what is it, 3-foot thick folder with all the weird, obscure comic book villains. But it's like, you know, of all the ones to choose, you go for those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of feel bad. What were you going to say, Joe?
I was going to say, do they have an attachment to the Aether in the comic book lore? Like, because obviously okay, they don't.
They're just one of the races in the 9 realms. It's like there's them, and then there's like the frost giants, and then there's like the magma people, and then, you know, the dwarves and yada yada and all that.
Okay.
It's just Norse mythology inserted into the Marvel universe, and some of them get guns and stuff. I don't know.
Yep. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. So they're just like, hey, we spun the roulette wheel and it landed on Dark Elves, so I guess that's what we're using today.
Pick a realm, any realm.
Yeah. Yep.
Not that one. Not that one.
So, I do feel kind of bad for Christopher Eccleston with this film, just because he had to sort of. He's now in the Thor sequel. He's now having to sort of meet that same level of quality that Loki gave us. Loki, I think, was pretty. We got some pretty good villains in Phase 1, but I'm pretty sure Loki was pretty easily the best, and he's easily one of the best MCU villains we've gotten. And so, getting that in Thor, now Malekith has to live up to that. And yeah, I feel like that was already a losing battle anyway, and it fell flat. So it really was a shame, because that really is what I think drags this film, the second one, down, because I feel like we do get some really good character moments between Thor and Loki. We get that. Some good moments between him and Odin, him and Heimdall. We get some good character time. It's just having Malekith as the villain and him being the focus. He's a very weak, very bland villain. And thus, since the focus is on him, also makes the plot sort of bland and not that interesting. So thankfully, we do get a decent amount of character moments, which did make this film less boring. But it could have been better, and should have been better.
I feel like because obviously your villain is not going to be as good as Loki. Like, that's a really hard bar to clear, because Loki is just such a good. He's by far, Tom Hiddleston's Loki is the best thing to come out of the Thor movies, I think.
Sure.
I think I don't think it was close. I think between that character and anything else, it's like trying to clear that bar. Just don't even do it. Because the purpose of Dark World is to show us the Aether. You don't even need to give us a villain. Just have the plot be about them trying to find the Aether for some reason. Like, they need to get to it, and it's a race to get to it against some other group. And so it's not even necessarily a villainous relationship. Just there are two different people who are trying to get to this thing for their own reasons. That would have been a better way to do this. And then you don't have to worry about, like, oh, we have to make this really menacing character, but also make him be someone that we care about, like Loki.
Yeah.
Just make it be someone who wants it for his own reasons.
That would have gotten rid of the fact that all these character beats are happening and stuff, and then it feels like they all get interrupted because, we got to worry about Malekith, we're going to worry about the Mind Stone, Reality Stone, or whatever.
Yeah,
it's like,
it's the reality.
We got to worry about that. That's right. Let's get away from. Hold on. Let's not hold on the interesting stuff enough. We got to meet our. We got to spend this budget money.
Yeah.
Send in the flying tea ships.
Well, what could have even been cooler is we finally got a sort of a bit of a heist film with Endgame when they got to go steal the Tesseract, but turning Thor 2 into a heist film where you've got them trying to hunt for the Ether, and then halfway through, Malekith gets it. So then now he needs Loki to find them, I guess the Dark Elves or something, and sneak in to get the Ether without them noticing. That would have been fun.
That would have been a great idea. That would have been much better. Yeah. Actually, can we move into the pitching alternative better versions of these movies section of the podcast?
Seems like a smooth transition.
Are we gonna loop back into side characters eventually? Because I do want to talk about them.
Sure, let's do that. Let's talk about the movies we actually have first, and then we'll go into the pitching better versions of these movies.
Okay, yeah. It's just I just want to say, Idris Elba as Heimdall is really cool.
Oh yeah.
100%.
What is it? Stellan Skarsgård is wasted, especially in the second movie. They don't give him nearly enough. If anything, they gave him more in the Avengers movie, which is funny. And then it's just like, I mean, the rest of them are there. Natalie Portman's fine. She's puts in a serviceable performance.
Yeah.
And then she said, all right, clearly you're not going to give this paycheck's nice, but can I have literally anything to act with? Just anything. They're like, no, go away. And they said, all right, fine. And then Taika Waititi came up and said, they kind of did you dirty. I want you to bulk up and come back and do my movie. And they're like, okay, why not?
Yeah. I did think Darcy was a good addition. I thought she was funny. I liked her little jabs here and there. I thought she was enjoyable.
She was just, what is it? What's her name? The actress's name?
Kat Dennings.
Kat Dennings was just playing Kat Dennings. And I will never see it as anything other than that. And it's distracting because of it.
Oh.
It's just,
Well, that's a criticism. That's also a criticism of Thor Ragnarok, right? Like, with Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum was playing Jeff Goldblum.
And that's what he does in 90% of the things these days. So I think that's not a Taika Waititi direction or a problem with the character. That's just Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum.
That's true. Well, I'm saying, like, that's not it's not a problem there in Ragnarok. I also don't think it's a problem of Kat Dennings being Kat Dennings for her portrayal of the character in the first two Thors.
I suppose that's up to taste in the end, which is one of the few things that can be said about these things.
Something I will say before going into more alternate takes, something that I think with the first film, I mean, there is sort of some of that in the second, but I just think the direction in the first is better. They got Kenneth Branagh, who's acted in quite a few films. He's the one who directed this first film. He's mainly known for directing modern adaptations of Shakespeare plays. So getting somebody to, I feel like up to this point, I can't remember where it is, whether I was before or after Captain America. It was somewhere, it was definitely early on, but definitely at this point, Thor was sort of the most out there character to try and take on of the ones they were trying to take on. It was just like trying to ground this character and take him seriously, I feel like would have been hard to do. But Branagh sort of gave Thor this sort of grandeur and respect as a character that I definitely think was smart, starting this character off on the right foot. So when it comes to, you had mentioned earlier how Thor 1 and Thor 2 are mainly setup films. I definitely think Thor 1 stands on its own much better than Thor 2 does.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I will say, I will definitely give you that. Thor 1, if you cut out the end credit scene, right? If you cut, which is just blatantly a setup, right? But that's okay, because Iron Man has that too, right? Iron Man has the Nick Fury flying in to what, I can't remember how he says it, the first one. Oh, he quotes, "I am Iron Man. You think that you're the only one." Yeah. I mean, it's to say, that's also explicitly.
It's a great end credit scene.
It is great. If you cut that out of
pioneering
Thor,
one.
I think that Thor probably still works. Dark World does not work as its own movie. You have to at the very least, you have to have seen Avengers in order to even be able to understand Dark World.
Yeah.
It's incomprehensible outside of that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the problem is it would work if the story itself, I wouldn't even mind that other films need to be watched, because phase 2 onwards, that's been half of the MCU films. But the difference is just the story just being weak, because Winter Soldier is pretty similar in that case, where it takes place after the first Avengers film and all that. But at least that is a great story and very well told. Problem is here, they just, not as much effort was put in. They got a weaker director to do this, and it was just not a great move. So
I think this is something I was thinking about, is both of those movies, not both of those movies, 2 movies in phase 2 exist for exactly the same reason. Thor Dark World exists to show us the Reality Stone, and Guardians of the Galaxy exists to show us the Power Stone. Like, that's the reason both of those movies actually exist, is to show us those 2 Infinity Stones on screen at least once before we go into the actual Infinity War. but the difference in quality between those two movies cannot be overstated. Right? Like, Guardians of the Galaxy is great. It's a great standalone movie. It has a great, like, it first of all is its own movie. You can enjoy it as its own thing without having any context of the MCU, and it's a good story on its own. And it does a better job of like showing off the Power Stone and for the amount of time that it's on screen, making you understand and appreciate it without overstaying its welcome. And in my opinion, I think more of the characters are better in Guardians of the Galaxy. Obviously, Loki's the best, but
right.
A lot of the side characters are pretty take it and leave it. Whereas I think pretty much everyone in Guardians of the Galaxy is excellent. It's like there's this weird difference in quality of juxtaposition. I even think they came out with like within a year of each other.
Yeah, and I think a big thing with that has to do with the directing. You get somebody like this was, I think, Guardians. It was either the first or one of the first. They're like, hey, we'll take this guy. Let's take a chance on this guy. I guess I'd have to go back and look at the timelines and all that, but James Gunn is an example of them taking a chance at paying off. The other guy, I think his name was Alan Taylor. He was somebody who he had directed very few movies. He was mainly known for directing TV like The Sopranos and Game of Thrones. And so they thought somebody with that sort of credibility could handle this well, and it was just a bad call. I don't know a better way to explain it than that, because you look at the writing team, the same person who did a lot of the Avengers and Captain America films. So I feel like the writing team was probably not to blame here, is my guess.
Interesting. Okay.
And it may also be because didn't Gunn write and direct Guardians?
Yeah, he's one of those writer-directors, which definitely helps.
Yeah, I think that might have helped as well. It also helps that I was kind of just thinking of this. It's like Thor: The Dark World is the perfect when you think of, this whole thing, the MCU, the whole collection of films intertwined and whatnot. It's the perfect growing pains film. Because you've had the Avengers, you've had the Showstopper, and then wait, there's more after that. Okay, what do we really do? We know we got this end point that's eventually going to be, what is it, Infinity War, and it's like there's the checklist. It's like Joe said, we have to have the stone, we have to have prior character, we have to introduce some new characters, and well, I don't think the Dark World even fulfills that kind of basic checklist they came up with.
Yeah,
and it's just kind of. Again, like you sort of said, it's like they got a lesser, not a lesser known director, but sort of like one who might not have been acclimated to like film instead of TV, because there's a mountain of difference there. So it's just a real good indicator of them trying to figure this whole thing out. And it's funny that one of the best ones that is both one of the best MCU films and one of the best like independently watchable films or whatever came out just a few months later, according to this timeline here. Guardians came out in not a few months, year after, in July of 2014. So
it's almost like you graduated from 5th grade and now suddenly you're an awkward teenager in 6th grade. Right, like you were on the top of the world, but now you're an awkward teenager who's going through puberty and everything's weird and you don't know what you're doing. Eventually, you're going to grow up to be a cool adult, but first you have to get through this awkward. Like that's what Thor: Dark World is. It's the awkward puberty phase of the MCU.
The MCU is what happens when you succeed, and if you fail, well, let's just say you don't want to see what happens there.
Well, yeah. DC. You need a lozenge there, sir? It sounds like you have something stuck in your throat.
I just need a sip of water. My Hawaiian spring water, A lot of things happening in Hawaii nowadays. That's an Ezra Miller joke. Guys, it's relevant.
Oh, okay. I was way over my head.
I just remembered that, but I don't like Ezra Miller, so don't bring him up again.
No.
All right, back onto Thor. Back onto
things more interesting than the first and second Thor movies. Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't know. There's some stuff that's frustrating because like we actually get an interesting glimpse of like in Thor: Dark World, we see there's a scene where like a bunch of people are training on Asgard, and you see a couple of ravens flying overhead, and then one of them lands on Odin's arm, and you're like, wow, that's actually a cool thing because Odin actually has two in the mythology. Odin has two ravens called, I think they're Thought and Memory are the names of the ravens. Like he has these two ravens that he uses to like survey the world because they fly all over the place and see things, right? It's like, oh wow, that's a really cool like little mythological motif there. And then we get, I don't know, other utterly inconsequential stuff that has no bearing, that isn't interesting at all. And you know, we have this, and I think you know, Jack, I think you're the one that said it's a directing problem. It's not that there was bad stuff written; it's that it wasn't put to its full potential.
Yeah,
maybe.
A bit like half of Odin, just no vision.
Oh man,
no clear vision.
Too soon.
I mean, he's been dead for a while. I figured it would be good enough.
Oh man.
Now that just makes me want to think about Ragnarok again. All right, let's move on before I think about Ragnarok more.
Better things, not better things, worse things. Although alternative things. So my pitch, or we're go ahead if we don't have anything to talk about with the movies as they are. Okay, my pitch for the original Thor is: do not show any of Asgard. Have the entire movie take place on Earth, and have it intentionally be presented as like Thor seems like a rambling madman, and the human characters do not know if they can actually trust him or if he's actually crazy or not. And have the movie be about him, like the first act is him maybe breaking in and trying to get to the hammer, and he can't do it. He can't pick it up.
Just some crazy guy named Donald Blake.
Right. Just some crazy guy named Donald Blake who breaks in and tries to pick up the hammer, and he can't do it. And then the second act is him like trying to learn to fit in, and you get this really interesting fish out of water story of him learning to fit in, earning these people's trust, and then something happens where he has to prove himself, and that goes into the third act, and the third act involves him getting the hammer back and getting his powers back, and like showing, oh yeah, I actually am Thor. I'm not crazy. I'm not some random lunatic who's hallucinating. I actually am who I say I am. But now he's earned it by having gone through these various trials. And we can absolutely have Loki there, because my idea is that Odin sends Thor to Earth, and then he tells Loki, hey, go and keep an eye on your brother. And Loki interprets that as go and make Thor absolutely miserable, because that's how Loki would interpret it, right?
Yeah.
And so Loki like uses his little trickster magic to become part of S.H.I.E.L.D. and is just blending in and doing stuff. And Thor immediately recognizes him, and Loki absolutely denies any connection to it, which further reinforces this idea that maybe Thor is crazy. And you know, it's another hurdle that he has to overcome. And it perfectly fits. We have the opportunity for a lot of Loki shenanigans that way, right? We have him being sarcastic and a trickster and a prankster and things like that. But it fits better into this narrative as opposed to him doing his own thing on Asgard and Thor doing his own thing on Earth for most of the movie. So that's the general broad strokes of the plot. I haven't like worked out all the details, but that's the general idea of what I think would be a better story. So
he could even be trying to kill Thor to secure his place on the throne or something.
Could be. He could even be he doesn't know, right? It could be that he's like, I'm doing this because Odin said so. Do I want Thor to come back? Do I care about him because he's my brother? Do I not care about him? And like that, because Loki is this more interesting character of like actually has these struggles of what he believes and what he wants. We can have scenes with that. We can have scenes of him like trying to decide. We can have a scene where like Thor breaks in to get the hammer, and Loki's like, "Oh, this is it. I can have Thor killed right now. I know he's in here. I know he's going for the hammer. I know I could get him killed right now." And then choosing not to.
Yeah.
And like committing to, no, he's my brother. I care about him. right? And we can have that contrast, and it makes it more interesting, makes that relationship more interesting because you get to see them make those decisions on their own. So that's my pitch.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Pretty good, but how are we going to sell all the toys of Thor in his costume?
Well, you get the end scene, right? At the
okay,
end,
there's that. However, what are we gonna put in the trailers, Joe?
A crazy man with a walking stick.
Yeah, that works. We could have like heist. Probably you advertise the heist portion where he's trying to break in and steal his hammer. Like, something has been stolen from me. I need your help to retrieve it. Something like that. Like he's pitching
I vaguely remember one of the trailers now because they do show a decent amount of that because like they show him fighting the stuntman or whatever. I'm calling him the stuntman because that's definitely what he was, like the big shield agent.
Yeah. That was his purpose.
Yeah, you stuntman, come here. Yeah, that seems pretty good. We could, was it? Well, you see, it's pretty cool, but let me just tweak your idea just a little.
Sure, please. Absolutely.
I want to throw half of it out and put my own half in. No, but that sounds like it would be definitely more intriguing to play into the mystery a little bit more. However, what is it? I kind of, knowing that the original director was like more of a Shakespearean adaptation guy, I kind of understand why he sort of did the more things the way he did now, sort of like, I understand he wanted this to be like an epic, like a that's why he included like the battle across all the different realms and stuff like that, attack on Jotunheim and stuff. It's like we could probably still do a little bit of that, allude it to a little, because I mean, as much as the audience can suspend disbelief, maybe he is crazy. I mean, the poster has Thor with a hammer, and like you're talking about like a full rework, which they could have done. They probably could have, but then there's just like, you go in with a little bit of outside knowledge of just like, this is about the Marvel character Thor, the guy with the hammer, and it's just like, maybe in the first and second acts, we intersperse a little bit of the backstory instead of it all being front loaded into the first half. We start in medias res, don't we? With like him getting cast down on the earth. Is like, instead of it going all the way back, a whole first act's a flashback. Just pepper all the Asgardian stuff in the first and second acts. We'll find out more about Loki. It'll lead more into, hey, his motivations are unclear, but hey, maybe he really does still care for his brother, yada, stuff like that. And then we'll also see that, oh man, there's this whole other epic world, and instead of holding on it for so long and whatever, you get just enough to pique your interest, enough for it to be intriguing without it becoming too, I don't know, too grand, I suppose, because in the end the story is about Thor learning from his mistakes, and you gotta have Thor, you gotta give Thor a mistake to learn from, other than, oh, he killed some blue people who were totally not evil guys. They're not evil, they just have red eyes.
But I think if you could have it be, he shows up in the desert and the Jane crew hit him with their RV or whatever it is they're driving, and then you get some very quick flashbacks, like a minute of flashbacks of him before he wakes up at the hospital, right, where he's remembering he's hearing Odin say, "You are unworthy of the friends whose lives you've endangered. You're unworthy of these gifts. You're unworthy of your power." Like, you hear that, and then you hear the enchantment that he puts on the hammer, and then he wakes up and he's in the hospital. Right. And you're like, okay, is this real? Is this guy having hallucinations? What's going on here? Like that. Yeah. So like,
he did just get hit with a car.
He did just get hit with a car, and then you can sprinkle in, he's telling the story. He's telling bits of story, and maybe you actually get flashback scenes, and the first telling of it he gives is a very much in his favor story. Right? He's telling people exactly what he needs in order to get them on his side, because he genuinely believes he's the good guy. And then as he learns from his mistakes, he realizes the mistakes that he made in the past. Like, he realizes, oh, I did this stupid stuff, and he admits that stuff. And him telling people the actual real version of the story is him admitting that he made the mistakes, right? It's like,
Yeah, something. I don't know why that made me think of this. Something I do sometimes. You guys have heard me do this. Sometimes I do like to do it with films where you start out with the villain acting like the protagonist, and you think you're on their side, and they suddenly twist it on you towards like the end of the second act into the third act. So what you could do is you open up with Thor breaking into Shield. None of the conversation with Jane, just from Shield's perspective. He breaks in, he screams. Screen pauses, and Thor's like, "Yep, that's my stupid older brother." And then he sort of goes into his whole childhood and all that, and we get it from his perspective. Then we start to see Thor learn and all that, and then eventually we realize, oh yeah, Thor's the good guy, and Loki's just the jealous younger brother, kind of thing. But kind of
work.
You could do that, or you could still do the same thing where you start out with the scene where Shield. He breaks into S.H.I.E.L.D., he screams up in the sky, and then Thor pauses the screen. Hi, you're probably wondering how I got this mess. Start the movie.
And then the Who starts playing in the background. Well, right. You see. Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, exactly.
I think you just want to do screen phrases in Marvel movies.
Exactly.
Jack, I gotta
don't get enough
I think you have a type.
Just maybe just a little bit.
It's fair. I do like that. I mean, obviously, one of the best Disney movies is
Emperor's New Groove.
Emperor's New Groove, yep, because it does a bunch of those.
Yes.
Recast Chris Hemsworth with, what is it, James Spade, or whatever his name is.
But, animated Cuzco. Not like animated Cuzco is walking around New Mexico.
No.
Yes, in a Thor film. It'd be awesome.
All right, I think we're getting off track here.
Very. This was before they were acquired by Disney, too, so don't give them any more ideas.
Oh, yeah,
the Thor reboot starring Cusco. What?
Let's get Yzma as the villain in Thor 5. Let's go. Come on, Yzma and Kronk.
All right,
let's make it happen, people.
And you know what else with the flashbacks? Your thing is freeze frames, my thing's flashbacks, because you can connect the flashbacks. Guys. Here's a thing that writers do. They flash back to something that's relevant to the lessons that the character is learning in the present. So, say he's being a jerk to this is just I'm not creative enough to think of anything that is like a new scene of this new pitched movie. It's like what is it? He throws down the mug in the diner or whatever, and then there's like a quick cut to him like celebrating at a feast, and like everybody's doing the same thing or something, and then he's just like, oh man, you can't do that here. That's not nice or something. He's like, oh, but we do it all the time in the feast hall of Ygaagruan or whatever. I don't know.
Ygaagruan.
The feast hall of Ygaagruan. Yep, that's it. That's exactly
that's canon. Yeah, that's canon.
That's going to be our new description for the podcast episode. Join us in the feast halls of Ygaagruan as we discuss the first two Thor films. I'll send you a proper spelling in the chat. Please do.
Oh man!
Is it any better than Mjolnir or Yggdrasil or Heimdall?
No, that's the reason it's funny. The reason it's funny is because the actual names are not any better. The actual names in Norse of Norse characters are just ridiculous, and Ygaagruan totally fits.
I mean, come on, Anthony Hopkins would totally pull it off. I've not seen you in the feast halls of Ygaagruan as of late. Where have you been, Thor?
Honestly, yeah. Anthony Hopkins was the best part of the 5th Transformers movie. That's how well he can pull things off.
Yeah.
I really hope we don't talk about those one day.
Don't even mention it.
We're not that desperate for content just yet.
Cut it now, Jack. I'm noting it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I do think having flashbacks of Thor being a jerk in various being a jerk to people as he's learning, hey, I'm kind of a jerk and I maybe shouldn't be doing that, and him recontextualizing himself.
Yeah.
Great. It's a great way to do that. If that was the story we were going to tell. Unfortunately, that is not the story that we got. So, speaking of that story that we actually got, any other last-minute comments we want to make? Last-minute thoughts? Improvements? Hopes?
No,
dreams?
I think we've already given these films enough time and energy at this point.
We've given them more energy than they're worth.
Probably.
Oh, number rating.
Yep, that's what I was going to go into. You guys want to go first?
Sure. All right. So first film, even though there are definitely other Marvel films I like better, I still, for introducing Thor into the MCU, I still think it does a solid job, and I found myself entertained rewatching it. So I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. I enjoyed it. And then for the second film, I definitely like the characters a lot, love the interactions, already mentioned that. But due to the weak villain and plot, probably going to give it closer to like a 6.
Fair. I will give it. I'm gonna take you 1 point from each of those. So I will give Thor 1 a 7, and I would give Thor: Dark World a 5 out of 10.
All right.
Perfectly serviceable movie.
Yep.
Nothing to write home about.
I'm going middle of the road for both. 5 each.
Fair. That is fair. Alrighty. I think that is it, gentlemen, correct?
Sounds good.
I'd say so, yeah.
Well, as always, thank you for tuning in. If you've been listening this far, we appreciate it. And if you haven't, well, hey, you haven't missed that much. We have been Background Noise. Tune in next week, and we will be talking about the last two, maybe the last two Thor movies, the next two Thor movies.
Yes.
How about that?
Yes, very nice. Now, let's see Taika Waititi's Thor movies.